talking here a little about the relationship between regulation, risk, and DeFi, which is really growing in popularity right now. And I think that the DeFi to me speaks to a very interesting group of people who are interested in crypto. And what I think you can see a lot through crypto, and this is true if you're looking at broader conversations around institutions in the world, people's faith and reliance on traditional institutions has been eroding lately, caused by a lot of factors. But particularly in the financial industry, people who have less and less faith that banks are really like the only group that they want to go to in addressing this. But, the flip side is that, and there's plenty of cases where banks have been accused of, aiding money laundering at a broad, wide scale, or insider trading, or profited from any number of illegal activities. And I think that the issue is that they kind of also creates that people sort of push back and say, well, we don't want to have anything to do with this regulation. We're trying to kind of create a new community for ourselves. And so I think there's sort of this interesting situation where we as a crypto community here, I'm speaking, we're sort of grappling with this sort of twin issue of sort of not only, to what extent should we wish to adopt and wish to engage with the traditional system of state regulation, at the same time, should we be maybe trying to set up our own industry specific regulations, or should we just ignore them completely? And so I think DeFi is kind of this, to me, a very interesting situation where, very specifically kind of around this idea of lending and also having, earning interest on your money. It's a way of sort of saying, it's very explicit about, we don't need banks, we won't need this traditional kind of top heavy infrastructure, which of course, bites into your margins quite a lot. At the same time, it also sort of, I think as we've seen in DeFi, there's, when the code isn't audited, when the founders maybe haven't been well vetted, there's been plenty of scams already and plenty of cases where people have lost quite a lot of money. You talk about something like yield farming. There's a very specific group of people who are profiting, and they profit because they have a very clear understanding about the relationship between these different protocols, the way that the smart contracts are set up. And then there's a group that's, probably kind of also sort of does not have that information, does not well understand that information. Complicated, I think. A lot of people who might not really have a very good understanding of the risks that they're taking. And, I think one aspect of, there's a lot of talk, for example, people are in the United States very upset because of the accredited investor rules, which say that, you have to have a certain net worth or a certain high income or prove that you have a certain intelligence about the market before you can make certain types of investments, usually related to startups, where you often see this. But, what's interesting about crypto is that, basically, and we have plenty of stories, out there, that anyone whatsoever can mortgage their house. They can take their entire life savings and they can put it on any exchange, and even with little protection and little knowledge, about the market, and they might lose it. They might lose their house, And I think that's one thing that people don't acknowledge very well in the crypto industry is that although the regulations often do bite against sort of innovation and freedom to be able to invest your money where you want, the stated purpose of most regulations in most countries is also to protect the average retail investor, to make sure that millions of people don't lose their life savings, which would be, disastrous for them. It'd be disastrous for them, and it'd be disastrous for the crypto industry, and it'd be disastrous for, whoever's kind of left on the other side of picking up where that would fall off, if that means that people's families have to support, their people have to move back in with their parents, or if that means that, you have to support your parents when they lost all their life savings, or if that means that, the state has to step in and make everybody whole, but, consequently might be raising taxes on the rest of the country. That's kind of what these regulations are about. They're much more complex, I think, than people are going to give them credit for, to say in the crypto industry, like, oh, it's a one-sided thing, like, oh, we're just looking at kind of like, just the laws, and like, this is just kind of like a checkbox thing, which you have to kind of engage in. Like, do you meet this? Do you have this? Do you have the right paperwork? Do you have the proof that you have engaged in, the correct KYC or whatever that is? And I think that's how a lot of people think about the laws and regulations in crypto, but I think it's a much more complex and much more fluid situation than a lot of people give it credit for. Would regulation address some of the problems in DeFi? I'm not sure. I really like the kind of like central idea of DeFi, but the thing is, I've just noticed, and I don't want to talk about it like tons of people, but people talk about it in like such a weird way, like evil bankers were like preventing them from doing something. And I'm always like, well, what were you trying to do? Like, and I'm like, were you trying to like buy a car and they wouldn't like give you a loan? Oh no, that's not the problem. oh, so you wanted a house or something? Like, what were you going to the bank for? And they don't really have a thing they were trying to do with the money. Like, and I'm always like, well, what's in it for you exactly? And there's never seems to be quite a good answer. To me, it always just struck me as like a very complex, interestingly built casino, which I'm fine with. I just don't like casinos very much.